A diver was taken aback by the humpback whale's unexpectedly grand gesture of appreciation after the man had risked his life to rescue it. A lone humpback was seen swimming along the coast of an American town late at night. In the beginning, the creature was casually floating about. However, it was unable to notice any underwater impediments due to the darkness. Suddenly, the whale found itself entangled in a length of rope. It began to fight, twisting and turning in vain attempts to free itself. The whale would wait there for hours for someone to come and rescue it. They didn't set sail with the intention of one of their number becoming a legendary figure. James Mosquito was indeed a seasoned scuba diver who had only lately joined the group on one of their expeditions. The unusual happenings of the previous night were reported to the volunteers first thing that morning. It was unclear what was meant to be conveyed, but they were given a quick hint that a creature was involved. Irritated and intrigued, one of the crew's quickest boats was loaded up and taken out on the sea. The boat was piloted toward the destination. About 7 miles separated them from the San Francisco shoreline. They saw something under the water's surface. A whale, to be precise. The creature's head was bobbing up and down. I aimed it squarely at the assembly. The whales seemed to be evaluating them, maybe trying to determine whether they posed any threat. A day before setting up crab traps, the humpback became entangled in a dozen of them. They had been vacant the day before, but had filled up night. About 3,000 old/1360 was the combined weight of the bunch. Like an anchor holding the whale in place, the delay finally ended. Whales, in contrast to fish, are unable to breathe beneath water. Mammals, like them, need to routinely swim upwards to reach higher levels of oxygen. There was a noticeable decline in this humpback's strength despite the fact that it kept coming up for air. The monster had obviously been awake for a long time. It was incredible that it was still living despite all of that time. James' ears started ringing as he watched the whale breaching close to the surface with the crew. He was recently aboard a boat somewhere else. Something terrible happened to him in the past, and he will never be able to forget it. The blue whale shark was attacked by many sharks, making its situation more worse. James was back in shark-infested waters during the wrong time of year, so lots of dangerous creatures were likely to be lingering along the shorelines. This whale wasn't only stuck, rendering it defenseless, it was also injured. It was damaged by oil seepage into the water, just like insects drawn to a flame. James anticipated that the neighboring sharks would attack the stranded whale. A mile or more of oil slick spread out from your vehicle. White shark in the region would have a feast if James did nothing, and he didn't have much time. He had no choice but to dive in and try to liberate the whale again from trappings. In the shortest amount of time. James had some trouble with his scuba gear. As he was getting ready, he shared his opinions with a group of divers who listened intently. They had faith in the guy because of his wisdom and integrity. They respected his poise under intense mental stress. As James peered into the deep blue water below him, he was well aware of the presence of the shark. It wasn't primarily the specific locations that James was worried about, but the possibility of meeting a being much more powerful than himself. If someone else had been in James' position, they could have panicked or run away at the sight of the enormous animals swimming nearby. But James is the courageous one. And rather than dwell on the risks, he chose to see the silver lining in the whale's newfound independence. James alerted one of the team members about the sharks by pulling him close to him just before he dived in. James was aware of how to respond to the danger, but he wasn't certain that the others were, so he warned them to be alert and keep track of one another. James claims that making eye contact directly with the sharks is safe because it signals to the sharks that you are not a meal. James looked around the sea around the boat briefly before fixing his eyes on the whale. To my knowledge, no sharks have been seen as of yet. With a firm grip, James donned the mask. A moment later, he was seated on the boat with the rest of the passengers, and a split second later, he was swimming alongside them. Within minutes, he was joined by every other diver. James dove in after the whale, with his other divers close after. He came closer and saw that the organism's head was completely above water and that it was gazing at him. It was obviously in a bad position and needed assistance, but it was acting wary of the human who was approaching it. Any reasonably clever animal might have recognized the sadness and exhaustion in the creature's eyes. James felt sorry for the beast. The whale was obviously aware of the danger it was in and likely interpreted the humans as possible predators. For the purpose of filing a lawsuit against the whale, the scuba diver put out a hand and made some kind of a communicative gesture toward the object. James muttered quietly as he massaged the whale's face on his side. "I'm here to offer you some assistance. I promise that I won't do you any harm." A hole was starting to form in the whale's skin where the rope had been. It makes sense that the whale couldn't free itself. There were burns and scrapes from how far the wire had dug in. When one of the whale's traps first grabbed the animal, in an effort to free itself from the rocks, it flailed about wildly, twisting the rope and further embedding it in its body. The humpback had been straining all night, and now it was captured in further traps. The whale was undoubtedly under a great deal of pressure, as shown by the tautness of the ropes. Longer than a mile the crab nets were used. James' compassion for the whale prompted him to start cutting the rope. The whale was gradually liberated as the knife sliced through the various layers of resistance. When trying to aid James, the other divers were cautious so as not to further harm the whale. James would periodically turn around and scan the area for lurking sharks. He would advise the divers to maintain their deities visible, and after he was happy with their vigilance, he would resume his job of cutting the line. He urged the other swimmers to maintain their high standards. The whale was released after some time. The whale swam back down under the surface once the last cord was cut, but the divers celebrated their success by cheering and congratulating one another. They were successful in putting their strategy into action. They all thought well of James, and they predicted that he would become a fan favorite as a result of the games. You don't see a diver who rescues a whale very often. James's brave deed wasn't the only unexpected event of that day. Actually, the whale's response was unlike anything the humans had ever witnessed. Look at the way it acknowledged the man's assistance. The rescued whale went back to the spot almost immediately after being let free. James in particular saw its resurgence. James and his crew saw the whale surface again. James remained in the ocean, while the rest of the group had returned to the boat and was now watching the humpback whale from a safe distance. As he watched from below, the massive beast swam up and directly for him. As the whale surfaced, it nudged James gently, and awe filled him. As a kind of playful appreciation, it was swimming circles around the delighted diver, much as a pet would do for its owner. Their crew was shocked to see a wild whale acting as if James were an old friend, as it swam inside a figure eight around him for many minutes. It seemed unreal to James. James's recollection of the experience is so clear that he can almost see the contented animal again just by closing his eyes. Do you admire James' courage? Put your ideas in the box and I'll read them. Please to sign up to our YouTube for more material like this if you enjoyed the story and found it motivating.